The Lunaverse by Rainbow Double Dash, Magic Tutor by Rainbow Double Dash, Season 2, Episode 3, Chapter 5, Learning Curve. Twilight considered as she took in what Trixie had said, explaining how her day had gone so far. Her talking to raindrops the other day and learning about Snails' condition, volunteering to help Snails, the other foals showing up at her home unexpectedly, small rivalry between Tootsie Flute and Dinky Doo that had nearly given her brain damage, Firelock's earning of a key mark that had, as a side effect, nearly caused Trixie's house to explode. Whilst he spoke, the foals sat in one corner of the library, looking over some of the more accessible books in them. At one point, Trixie had raised stood out in particular, though. "I've been indentured?" Twilight asked. Trixie, who had her cape off and was running her magic over it, tried to rid the smell of smoke. Paused at what she was doing and looked at Twilight. "No!" she exclaimed. "Of course not! Don't be ridiculous!" "Well, now that I think about it, it does actually sound a lot like indentured servitude." "It's not!" Trixie insisted as she shook out her cape. "You're here of your own free will. You can get any job you like in Ponyville. The town council does set you up with this one. You don't even have to stay here. You can go back to Canterlot whenever you like." Twilight held up her hoof, though. There was a small grin on her face. I know, she consoled. "It's kind of funny, though." Trixie rolled her eyes as she put her cape back on. "I guess," she admitted after a few moments, letting out a long breath. Twilight did likewise, before looking over her shoulder at the seven foals. "So," Twilight said, "Magic Tutor?" "Yeah. And it's not going well." Trixie shook her head, though. She then looked around the library. "I didn't know you were resolving everything, though." She nodded, putting a hoof to one of the nearby pile that was nearly half again as tall as Trixie was. "You just got here. Probably the last thing you want to do is deal with foals." It wasn't the last thing, but it was fairly far down the list. Twilight hadn't gotten any sleep last night in her reshelving efforts, and while it was true she had done 72-hour study sessions in the past, she never had to deal with a rambunctious foal while doing such, let alone 7. Twilight wasn't very good with foals either, and most importantly of all, she was, well, Twilight Sparkle, the pony who had brought a nurse of Meyer into town and ruined those fools at the Evening Time Festival. Indeed, although probably remembered the bear stomping into town, she had personally put these foals' lives at risk. But on the other hoof, Trixie needed help. Wasn't likely to find it anywhere else at this time of day, not without disappointing the foals. Twilight steeled herself. "Okay," she decided, holding a hoof up in determination. "I'll help." Trixie looked surprised. "You will?" Twilight nodded. "Mayor Ivory Scroll suggested I should use my time here to help out ponies, right? Well, this is a good start. And I don't even have to leave the library." She thought a moment to look at another book she had seen in the library. "In fact," Twilight tried it off, looking over the various stacks of books strewn in the library. After a few false leads, she finally found what she was looking for. The book looked new, but in fact was just underused in the Earth Pony majority town of Ponyville. It was in fact several decades old. Sold and predated the current trend of alliteration in equestrian books, and was simply titled Cantrips by Dry Inkwell. "Here we go," Twilight says. He carefully removed the book from the pile and dusted it off with telekinesis. "This is the most basic kind of spell book there is. Nearly all of them can be used by any unicorn pony if they try hard enough. I can teach them finesse." Trixie looked the book over. The cover was plain as could be. Simply the title, the author's name, and a stylized image of a unicorn foal's head. The blue unicorn couldn't help but stick her tongue out. "Ugh, magic books. I have a bad history with them." Twilight nodded, remembering what Trixie had told her in the Everfree Forest. Well, an Everfree Forest, a few months ago. "Well, most unicorns don't have your Twilight bit her tongue before she could finish what she was about to say, looking at Trixie wearily. "Not that it's a problem," she said quickly. "Not problem, difficulty, Trixie smirked, waving her off. "It's okay, Sparkle. I can take a good ribbing, easily." The two started trying back to the falls. Twilight looked down to the floor as she did. "Sorry," she then grinned sheepishly. "After everything that's happened, I still don't think before I speak or act." "But you did catch yourself," Trixie pointed out. She was still wearing her smirk. "Come on, let's go introduce yourself to every pony." Twilight couldn't help but keep her head slightly bowed as the two reached the 7 foals, each of them having found a book to keep them occupied. She cleared her throat after a moment, getting her attention, and Twilight suddenly found the 7 sets of eyes focused on her. She managed to keep herself from flinching. Okay, guys, Trixie said, pointing to Twilight with one hoof. This is Twilight Sparkle, the town's new librarian. She's really good with magic, too. As good as you? Snails asked and placed the snips. Trixie looked at Twilight, putting a hoof on her mouth. She considered. Maybe a little better, she allowed. A little? Twilight asked, standing up straighter at the challenge. A smidge. Twilight stared at Trixie, who winked after a moment. Twilight's eyes narrowed in response. She also smiled as he turned back to the foals. I graduated summa cum laude in my class at Princess Luna's Academy of Advanced Magic and Higher Learning. I had a perfect grade point average, and Princess Luna herself gifted me my diploma. My thesis, an empirical study of translocation, analyzed the congenital valuables to enable teleportation arrivals within 0.5 thou, was published by the Arcane Academic Archives. Full stare at Twilight. Twilight stared back for a few moments, before letting it grin out of annoyance. This was why she wasn't good with foals. She didn't know how to talk to them. I'm really, really good at magic. Princess Luna said so. She abridged, trying to ignore Trixie's chuckle. Didn't you bring your new major to town once? Sweetbell asked. Twilight started, considering running back to her books behind her and forgetting this whole idea, before she realized what she was thinking and let out a sigh. No more running, no more hiding. That was her new mantra in life, wasn't it? It had to apply here, too. Yeah, except it wasn't Ursa Minor, but yeah, that was me. She deserved this. Any second now, the foals were going to cry out and say they didn't feel safe around her. And that was entirely fair, but at least he would have made the attempt for Trixie. That was awesome, Snails exclaimed. Twilight blinked, looking up. Huh? Since the Snails bumped hooves. Yeah, that was the biggest bear I ever saw. Snails got up on his hind hooves and lumbered like a bear towards the village. Roar! Ursa attack! That was for Luna, who leapt out of the way, and fluttering for extra speed. Though she giggled as she did. The game quickly became some form of variation for tag, where foals had to keep in a comparatively tight circle around the Ursa foal, who could only move on her hind hooves. Whoever he or she tagged had to take his place. Twilight stared. This had not been what she was expecting. She had put Pony's lives at risk. It wasn't a game, she began, but was noticed by Trixie. Looking, she saw the other mare wink, and looked back to the foals. Miss Sparkle's the one who brought Nurse Meyer into town, she said. Looking at the foals of the eyes, she smiled. But she's also the one who got rid of it. The foals stopped. Susie scared her back of her head. I thought you did, Miss Trixie, she said. I was watching you. You made like 50 copies of yourself and you threw lightning at it. Trixie chuckled again. Not exactly, she said. Mostly, I just distracted it for a few minutes. And Snail's sister did all the hoof work with the lightning. We were just buying time, though, so that Miss Sparkle, she pointed back to Twilight, could teleport it back home. The foal's eyes all looked again to Twilight, eyes wide. Dinky exclaimed, you're teleporting now. Twilight realized she was starting to get confusing, and forced herself to pass in a few moments. She said, actually, it's not really different from teleporting anything else. You just need to have the power. How much power do you have? Firelock asked. Well, it's not like magic can be easily quantified. There's a lot of variables. Hence why I needed all the time to build up the magic in the first place, since it's an exponential growth based on the mass. But she did have enough to teleport a bear and decided to the town hall. Trixie interrupted as she stood up straight again, nodding sagely. Wow! The falls all let out as their eyes grew somewhat wider. Trixie winked at Twilight again, and most of the Snails. Okay, she said. I want you six to stick with Twilight for the moment and behave yourselves for her. She's got a book of cantrips to teach you. Snails, we'll get that memory spell down like I promised. Then I'll try to work in some more time with each of the rest of you, starting with helping Firelock refine her new spell. Sound good? Falls all nodded, though they were all more fixated on Twilight, as Trixie and Snails tried to the library's second floor. Twilight her best to smile. Okay? She said, getting the cantrips and opening it to the first page. So where would you like to begin? I want to teleport! Snips exclaimed. Twilight grimaced a little at that. She looked down in the book. Teleporting magic is really, really difficult. Most unicorns can never learn any variation of it. So he read down the book's list of cantrips. None of them were related to teleporting in any way, not even small objects. Sorry. The Foals, almost as one, let out a collective sigh at that. Firelock, Snips, Sweet, and Luna looked at each other, Ditsy and Dinky, almost for confidence. Well, Ditsy said after a moment, drawing over to the book and looking at its table of contents. What's stick? It's an adhesive spell, she responded. She got a blank book. She reminded herself yet again she was dealing with Foals. It makes something sticky for a short time. You can attach it to something else. Tootsie looked at the rest of the Foals, considered for a few moments. This sounds fun, Dinky said after a moment. Miss Trixie hasn't talked about that one yet, so it'd be new for me too. Well, okay then, Twilight said. Smiling, she turned the book's pages until she reached the cantrip. She was surprised to find it seemed to take up more than 24 pages in the book. All the cantrips, in fact, were explained in exact detail. Twilight knew several different ways to accomplish the spell. As she glanced over, she found that this little attention to the ins and outs of the cantrip would make it perfect for teaching. Dry Ink will certainly want whoever read this book to learn everything about the spells contained therein. Okay, she declared, standing up straight as her horn glowed. She conjured some paper and simple pencils for the Foals, each of whom gasped in surprise at their appearance. Every pony, get ready to learn. The second floor of the library was no better organized than the first. Its level was smaller, and so the stacks of books seemed to make space of even more of a premium than the first floor. Trixie used telekinesis to move some of the books aside, to pick one out at random. What's in etymological encyclopedia? She wondered aloud. Oh! Snails exclaimed, grabbing a book. On instinct, Trixie kept it away from Snails' hoof, holding it over her head. Though admittedly, it didn't put it very far out of the Foal's reach. Snails realized his mistake after a moment. Oh! He said. Sorry for just trying to take it. I just really get excited with etymology. It's the study of insects. Oh, Trixie said. She almost lowered the book, but then smiled. Quick warm-up then. She placed the book on top of the last stack, then nodded towards it. Grab it with telekinesis. Then we can use a page from it for the memory spell. If you can't, then you'll have to memorize a page from. She glanced around, picking out the least pleasant books she could find in a moment, holding it up. The complete history of the decline and fall of the Fourth Empire. Ah! Snails exclaimed, holding up the book of etymological encyclopedia desperately, horn glowing. In 4 parts. Trixie added. She found a second volume in a different stack. She now had parts 2 and 4. If I can find all 4 parts, then you'll have to use this instead of the book. No! Snails cried again, eyes closed tight, teeth grit. Screen gold telekinesis wrapped around the encyclopedia and tugged at it, moved a few inches. Trixie chuckled slightly as he tried around, looking over the stacks. Uh-oh. I found part 3. Snails let out as he moved the encyclopedia a few more inches. He teetered on the edge of the stack. Trixie continued trotting around the room, half-heartedly looking for part 1. She was pretty sure she saw it buried in one of the stacks closer to the brick wall, but I decided to ignore it for a few more seconds. In those few seconds, Nails managed to get the encyclopedia into the air and over to his hose. Trixie smiled, sending volumes 2 through 4 declined down near the first volume, something she certain Twilight would appreciate later. She sat her front hose on the ground and applause. Good work. She complimented. Snails was panting a little, but smiled himself at Trixie's praise. You should try to use your telekinesis as much as possible at the home. My aunt and grandpa actually forbade me from using my hooves or mouth to grab things to eat at dinner for a whole week in order to teach me. If I couldn't grab it with telekinesis, then I wasn't allowed to eat it. Snails paused. That's mean, he exclaimed. Trixie shrugged. It was only for dinner. Made me learn telekinesis real fast. Also, my uncle told me that it was a take your daughter to work week. So I got to have big lunches with him and my cousin, sharp-minded. She frowned. La petite rapatos told us on exchange for ice cream. That was all right, though. She was a unicorn like me. So when her turn came, and I caught her at the dinner table. Snail stared at Tracy. Tracy stared back. Anyway, a memory spell. Find a page you like. The cult did, looking through the pages and looking over the various pictures and information about different insects. Finally stopped on a page and picture about diving bells. That one, he said, sitting on the ground and saying his article again. Tracy noted that this first step, channeling magic through his horn, the step before actually shaping magic, was already becoming much easier for him. Even if the more final second step of actually shaping the magic seemed to be just as hard. Casting her magic sight spells, he saw that his magic was flowing through his horn at a much speedier pace. The block of unchanneled magic was slightly smaller. Even if he hadn't learned a new spell yet, Tracy's efforts were definitely helping Snails. Bringing at the thought, she trotted over next to Snails, and pointing to the page of text that accompanied the picture. So, we'll focus on this rather than the picture. You'll be just like before with my cat. Think of a really memorable flavor. Sour apples, Snails proclaimed, his lips once again puckering at the memory. Sour apples, Tracy confirmed. Okay, take that flavor and kind of project it onto the page. You need to... Tracy thought for a moment, wondering how to work with this flavor as a set of colors and light, which she used for her own magic. You need to basically strongly associate this page with that taste. They need to be the same thing for you. Every time you think about sour apples, you remember this. Snails licked his lips so he kept channeling his magic through his horn. Small, harmless sparks flying out through the cult's down more magic that was necessary, and the excess escaped his horn. After a few moments, his eyes started to gain a green-gold color, both Trixie's normal vision and her magic sight. Tracy rubbed Snails' back. Okay, you've nearly got it, she said encouragingly. Snails grunted, redoubling his magical efforts. To Trixie, looked like he had hit a wall. The magic required for the spell being just too much for him to channel right now, thanks to his under-channeling problem. But he was so close. Trixie decided to lend a little bit of her own magic to the effort. Her horn glowed, and she melted some of her own magic with that of Snails. The Valdes seemed to notice, but after a few more seconds there was a bright flash, and all at once Snails' horn gave out. The colt stumbled a little, but caught himself with Trixie's help. He shook his head. Ow, he moaned. That hurt. Trixie patted him on the head as he canceled his magic sight spell. It's because you're under-channeling. You had to put more effort into this than usual. I also had to use a little of my own magic to help you, but only a little. And again, only because you're under-channeling. Keep doing magic, it'll get easier. Smiling, she looked to the encyclopedia, pulling it forward, and holding it in front of her, so Snails could see the page. Okay, let's see this worked. Fourth line of the paragraph that starts with, adult beetles have streamlined was... Snails thought, licking his lips. Covers, then Electra, and, Nace. Me has circled most of his hooves. Parentheses, Trixie's provided, and then... they have a long line of hair like filiform. Snails mates have circle muscles again. Antennae. Larvae are not frequently seen and have a long thorax. Trixie nodded. Okay. First wording. First line. From paragraph below that. R. Snails provided. Okay. What's it say after the first semicolon under his pestas? What's a semicolon? A comma with a dot over it. Oh. I don't know what that first word is. Predaceous on her insects. Trixie's smile widened. The fact that he was using punctuation marks on words he didn't know the meaning of meant the smell would most likely work. Snails would have probably told her or written it down, or whatever he wanted to do about diving bells already, but he would have been limited by his own grasp of equestrian while doing so. This is one new test. How many times, she said, counting, does the word in appear? Snails frowned, so closing his eyes to the thought. 9, he said after a moment. Trixie offered her the largest grin yet. Snails, I got news for you, she said, her tone making clear what kind of news it was. Snails opened his eye, giving a full-toothed grin at Trixie Matz. You did it. Yay! Snails exclaimed, moving back and forth between his front and hind legs. My first spell! Trixie nodded. She felt an errant itch on her flank, around her key mark. But I ignored it as it came forward, not for a hoof. Good job, she provided. Snails ignored the offer hoof and instead hugged Trixie. Thanks, Miss Trixie, he exclaimed. Trixie accepted the hug as Snails continued. I kinda wanted my first spell to be something to do with my animal friends, like making them bigger, but this is really cool too. Close his eyes. It's like I could carry around all the pictures of them I want all the time. Trixie patted Snails on the head. Well, you'll probably only be able to carry 2 or 3 images in your head, she said. That's all I ever remembered. The spell isn't related to your special talent, so you'll probably be about the same. It's really cool, and I can use it to help me draw them too. Trixie nodded, making away for Snails' hug. Welcome to the Etymological Encyclopedia. Okay, let's take a little bit to see if I can't help you cast this easier. Then we'll go and get Firelock. Alright, Joy said, using a hoof to point to the blackboard she had created. Once he had drawn the specific magical symbol and formula for Stick. Stick is a transmutation spell, or, more precisely, an alteration transmutation. An alteration transmutation changes the properties of some creature, thing, or condition. A spell that heats something up, changes something's color or shape, or turns one's thing into something else, is an alteration transmutation. She pointed to the next part of the blackboard. Now, Stick is a colloquial name of... What does that mean? Sleebell asked. Twilight paused for a moment. Colloquial? She asked. Sleebell nodded. It means informal and common. Like, for example, we normally call our country Equestria. That's its colloquial name. But its proper name is the Kingdom of Equestria. Although outside of Equestria, we're colloquially known as the Principality of Equestria. There's a really neat reason for this. Firelock interrupted, looking down her steam paper. Can we learn the spell? Twilight blinked. Of course, she declared, turning back to the chalkboard. As I was saying, Stick is a colloquial name of the spell. Properly, as Drive Inkwell points out, its real name should be Adhesive Dwemer. A Dwemer has an ongoing, lingering magical effect that exists independently of any influx of magic, as opposed to an Ars, with a magical effect that begins and ends instantly or nearly instantly, though its results can linger. The foes would collectively repressed giggle at the word Ars, though Twilight didn't know why. See, this is why I prefer being a druid, guys. Our magic comes from nature. I don't have to study a book about this. The adhesive Dwemer consists of several steps, Twilight explained, pointing to another part of the chalkboard. First, you gather your magic in your thalma and project it up to your horn. Next, you save the magic, adding qualities to it. Now, as I'm sure you know, every spell has 3 qualities. I didn't know that, Sleebell said. Neither did I, Susie said, looking surprised at herself as the Airfolks voiced their agreement. Twilight looked between them. Huh, she said. Well, that's okay. We could go over those now. Oh, Dicky said, raising a hoof. Miss Twilight, this has nothing to do with making stuff stinking. Twilight smiled. Well, for one thing, you're not making anything sticky with Stick, despite its name, she said. It makes one object stick to another object, but not through any kind of conjured glue. That would be a different spell. This does make one object stick to another. Dinky said, looking at the chalkboard, then down to her own pencil and paper. I've been having them take notes. But Miss Trixie never does any of this for teaching me a spell. He just shows me how to do the spell, then walks me through guessing it myself. I tapped the hoof to her chin, wondering how to explain this to foals in terms that they could understand. Their age, she already grasped most of the advanced concepts of magic, was already moving on to high magical studies. She imagined that most of the foals were somewhat less adept, though. If I asked you what 2 plus 2 is, she said at length, you all have an easy time answering, right? 4, the foals answered as one. Right, that's simple math. So simple you don't even need to go through the steps to add it up anymore. But what if I asked you, what's 184 plus 273? Try to do it just in your heads. The foals all thought, using your hose to tap out melodic rhythms to help with their equations. 457, Dizzy eventually exclaimed. Right, Twilight responded, pointing at to see. How did you get that? Well, first you add the 4 and the 3 together to get 7, Dizzy responded. Then the 8 and the 7. That gives you 15. Twilight nodded confirmation as Dizzy explained simple arithmetic. You use simple math to do more complex math, she said. Breaking the problem down into pieces made it easier to solve. Magic builds off of itself in the same way. She held out hope and conjured a piece of chalk. Knowing and mastering all the stats and simple cantrips will make it that much easier to do major magic. She turned around, tossed a piece of chalk up into the air, saw a beam of magic at it. By the time the chalk had hit the floor, it had transformed into a marble statue, taller than Twilight, depicting a model of the planet in orbit of the sun, moon, and stars around it. Ooh, the falls went out as one. Twilight smiled. She sent the statue back into nothingness. Turned around, looking back to Dinky. Understand? She asked. Dinky nodded. I do. Thank you, Sparkle. Okay, now where were we? Twilight asked, looking back to the cantrips and glancing up and down the page. Right. Every spell has 3 qualities. Twilight continued on for some time. She found herself surprised at how little these fools knew about the terminology and nuances of spellcraft. Even if they come from non-unicorn families, sure, their parents could have seen they went through at least a basic walkthrough, right? She decided to just talk out to the fact that Ponyville was an Earth-Pony majority-ruled town. Unicorns were a comparative minority, and most of them would only focus on learning spells directly related to their special talents, which would come more or less naturally. Few would ever try to branch out and test the limits of their cutie marks as Twilight had. Right, so every pony got that? Twilight asked as she finished. I didn't. Tracy's voice said. Twilight looked and saw her coming down the steps to the library's 2nd floor, snails in tow, the latter holding an entomological encyclopedia in his mouth as he trotted along, looking quite pleased with himself. Done, Tracy proclaimed, holding up a hoof in triumph. I have now officially accomplished something today. How are things on your end? We've almost started, Alois supplied helpfully, as Snails trotted over to Snips and showed off the encyclopedia. With Sweetbell, who could see the pictures of the bugs in the book, looked down a little grossed out. Trixie's eyebrow raised at Alois' statement. Almost started? She asked. Twilight nodded. We had to cover a few bases at first. Twilight said with a small smile. The qualities of a spell, the difference between a Dwemer and an Ars. Once again, the fools giggled slightly at that word, though Twilight still didn't know why. Percy, meanwhile, looked even more confused as he looked back to Twilight. What? And a what? Twilight blinked a few times. A Dwemer and an Ars, she repeated. Tracy continued to stare blankly. A continuously empowered spell versus a singular spell event? Tracy didn't look any more enlightened, and Twilight grunted. She conjured a brief flash of light. Ars, she provided, and created a ball of light that kept empowering her horn. Dwemer. Tracy stared at the light, tapping one hoof to her mouth. I think I maybe seem to recall that. Light leaned forward hopefully. I have no idea what you're talking about. Tracy nodded her head with certainty at that, while Twilight let out a groan before she could stop herself. But you learned magic from Princess Luna! She cried. Yeah, but not really the technical side. Tracy minutes as he tried over to Twilight's conjured blackboard, looking it over. Whenever Luna wanted to teach me a spell, she just sort of watched me through the steps, or she let me watch her cast her spell. Then I do whatever she was doing. Tracy smiled as he raised the hoof, looking back at Twilight. I know how to raise the moon. False went wide like that. Really? Dizzy asked. Tracy rubbed her hoof around her neck. Twilight took that in. Well, I'll never have the power needed, she said. Me and Twilight and every other unicorn in all of Ponyville together wouldn't even have a tenth of the power. But I know how to, yeah. How? Twilight asked, her voice completely deadpan. It's not easy, Tracy responded. See, first, you have to use magic, kind of like a mix between a lever and a key, and plug it into the moon. Not that, Twilight interrupted. How could you know how to do that, but not some of the most basic magical terms? Tracy put her front hose together as he thought, looking again at the blackboard and magical formula there. A key, she said. I have no idea what all that stuff means. I could easily still write it all down without understanding it, right? Well, magic, that makes you end up with a spell. See all the puff, or like with painting. I don't know how to actually paint in order to be a good painter. Twilight shook her head. Actually, some of the best painters make their own paint. You get what I mean, though. No, I don't. So you mean to tell me that when you turn yourself invisible, or create copies of yourself with illusions, you have no idea what's happening? Well, it is true, Twilight. If I may, one of the things I like about this story is that it is reminding us that there are many, 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 many ways to learn, and many ways to teach yourself. For example, when I was learning driving, well, my mom kept trying to tell me how to do backwards travel with different directions. I kept getting confused. But after going through the own basics of my knowledge of physics and how things work, I was able to learn it without needing vocal commands. Much like how I find out that I can learn Japanese really, really well with Duolingo. Well, if you were to sit me down in front of a computer program and have somebody drone on and on about it, I wouldn't get it. Some of us, like Twilight, do need books. It's how we learn, and we need to know the basic fundamentals. Then there are us like Trixie who learn more by following the steps. We don't need to know the basics. We just need to know the steps and we can master it. It's also kind of like how I can do martial arts really well and start learning really quickly through the ranks. Trixie bristled tried forward. I know what's happening, suggested. I'm bending light, but you don't know how. With magic, isn't that enough? Now if you want to do anything really complicated, hey, I can do complicated easy. Trixie turned and her horn flashed blue. She created a facility herself, grinning haughtily at Twilight. See? Perfect mirror image. You know how hard that was to learn. Twilight grunted, her horn flashing lavender. The mirror image of Trixie disappeared in a puff of magic. But how are you going to learn something really complicated? She asked, rifling through a few of her spells. You know, like this? Twilight closed her eyes, channeling magic from her horn down to her neck. She was wrapped in a lavender glow for several long moments. When the glow cleared, she sprouted a pair of large, shimmering butterfly-like wings. She fluttered them a few times, looking out the ground, smiling down at Trixie as she drifted up towards the ceiling. The false two were staring and awed. Trixie's eyes narrowed. I could figure that out, she chatted. You sure? This is a really difficult spell. Twilight says she flitted around through the air, nimbly avoiding the stacks of books that reached towards the ceiling. There's 8 different steps, and each of them requiring precise timing and balance of magic. It took up 20 pages in the book I found it in. Ugh! Trixie groaned, horn and eyes rotating on blue glow as she watched Twilight. Spell books! That's like writing out steps to the dance. You lose the entire dance in the process! Somebody also compared Trixie to being a sorcerer, to Twilight being a wizard. Twilight froze in midair, glaring down at Trixie. I've learned nearly every spell I know from a spell book. They work just fine for every other unicorn. Well, here's something that I made up just now, Trixie said. The azure glowed to her eyes, disappearing, and shooting a beam of blue magic at Twilight. It struck Twilight harmlessly, but she felt it watching over her newly created wings. With a purple flash, the wings disintegrated. Twilight let out a yelp as she fell towards the ground. Till Trixie's telekinesis caught her and set her back on her host harmlessly. Twilight glared at Trixie nevertheless. You just felt my wings! And I didn't even need a spellbook, Trixie proclaimed, raising one hoof in the air in still victory. Eyes closed. It's way more fun that way. Fun, huh? Twilight asked, torn glowing. Trixie opened her eyes as a lavender beam of energy struck her in the face. It didn't hurt, but she suddenly felt something. Reaching up to her face, she felt significantly more hair than she was supposed to be on her muzzle. Twilight caused her in the mirror in front of her. Trixie saw that she was now the owner of a brand new moustache and goatee ensemble. Twilight laughed as did the false. Trixie fumed, channeling magic onto her face and dispelling the unnecessary facial hair. She turned to Twilight. The lavender unicorn was snickering to herself. I learned that from a book, she declared. See? It can be fun. Funny, anyway. For me. Trixie's horn glowed bright blue. They're like you two, but adults, Firelight said to Dinky and Tootsie as the two adult unicorns argued back and forth about magic, as well as sung the occasional harmless spell between each other to make some point. Dinky admitted. Looking to the nose, Twilight made them think. I think Miss Twilight has a good point not knowing how magic works now, she said. But Miss Tracy has a good point too. Magic should be special, not just at-home work. Gigi flew out in agreement. Two falls together in a circle around the notes he had taken, from the chalkboard that Miss Twilight had created. It did feel like a math problem, even if there was a new spell for the foals at the end of the problem. None of them were particularly looking forward to working through it, what with them having gotten out of school so recently. Maybe we can put this together ourselves? Maybe, but I think we need Miss Twilight's help. Sweetbell decided. After a moment, the foals agreed. They didn't know yet what any of the formulae on the chalkboard and their notes meant, and Solly and Trixie had started after each other before they began. See what the Snails. But you learned your first spell? Snails bright and nodding. It's a memory spell, he explained, holding forward the encyclopedia he held. Open to the first page on diving beetles. Go on, ask me about anything on that page. Well, you know everything anyway, Sniffs asked as a little Sweetbell both went a little green at the picture in the page next to the book. A diving beetle detecting at several times its normal size. Snails shook his head. I mean, sort of, he admitted. I'd be able to tell you about diving beetles, yeah, but I wouldn't be able to tell you something like... He thought for a moment, eyes closed. There are 21 periods. All the air folds around crowded book, counting the periods. He's right, Tootsie declared after a moment. Hey, how many of these are there? Snails counted his head. 11. Hey, cool, Firelock exclaimed. Few sparks shooting from her horny excitement. The falls all flints, but they were just harmless, intangible magic sparks, not real ones. Firelock blushed a little. Sorry. That's a cool spell. You could use it to help you take tests. Snails shook his head. Miss Trixie suggested the same thing, but that seems like cheating. I don't want to do that. Firelock shrugged, grinning. If Miss Trixie shows me that spell, that's what I'll use it for. Still would probably love it too. You've seen our unicorn, so you thought out loud. She cried, So, Firelock, you learned how to make fireworks. Snails, you learned that memory spell. And me and Sniffs all learned how to make dancing lights. So we all learned something new today. Except me and Tootsie, Dinky pointed out, looking at Tootsie Flute. Why did you come anyway, Tootsie? You and me are already the best in class with magic. I'm Miss Trixie's magician assistant, and that's why I'm here. But when did you? I had a question for Miss Trixie, Tootsie said. My mama and Papa said that pure unicorns are better at magic than unicorns from mixed families. But these guys didn't believe me. Dinky frowned at Tootsie's statement. But I'm just curious and you, and my mama's a big missus, so is the rest of her family. What about your dad? Sniffs asked. Your sister's a unicorn. Is your dad? Dinky thought. For the cards artist, he never asked what tribe her father, Cass, or Cut was, as he couldn't remember if her mama or Sparkler had even mentioned it. She never met him herself either. No. Seaman was struck. But look at Firelock. Firelock, is he your dad at Earthbound? Firelock nodded. Dinky continued. Let's figure out your own spell all by yourself. Tootsie considered. But it's related to your special talent, she pointed out, poking up against Firelock's flanks, and a new beginning mark there. Those spells always come in eventually. Dinky admitted. Did you ask Akuma? Alula started, looking at her own hose. I don't know why every point comes to me. I don't know, she said softly. I did, Tootsie said with a nod. Alula agrees with every point else, but my mama and papa wouldn't have told me for no good reason. That's true, Dinky admitted. My mama always has a reason for everything. She paused a moment, though she thought about her mama's decisions. She loved her mother dearly, but... No, sometimes it doesn't seem like a very good reason. Well, that's why I came, Tootsie said. She turned around. In fact, I think I'll just go and ask them now. Tootsie trotted off towards the two adults. Intensely or otherwise, the two had cleared a broad space in the library, the two of them to argue and duel within. Moving stacks of books aside, debated and spell-slung. Trixie was once again sporting a goatee, though she seemed to be taking it in stride this time. Twilight, meanwhile, had somehow turned bright pink with yellow polka dots all over her coats. Magic is not a science, Sparkle! Trixie proclaimed with a stomp of her hoof. Well, it isn't an art either, Lula Moon! Twilight counted. Excuse me, Tootsie asked. The two adults paused before their horns grew bright, and they dispelled their respective enchantments they had laid over each other. What's up? Trixie asked. Any of her previous annoyance with Twilight apparently forgotten save for a slight glare to the other mare, to which Twilight returned. I have a question, Tootsie provided. About adhesive dimer? Twilight asked, striding forward, her eyes wide. Oh, I completely forgot about all of you. I'm so sorry, No, it's not about that, Tootsie said, shaking her head. She was well aware of the other foals coming forward, watching and listening to learn the answer to Tootsie's question themselves. It's actually about the reason I went over for Trixie's day in the first place. You two can go back to fighting after. We weren't fighting. We were debating, Twilight interrupted. Violently, Trixie added. What Tootsie blinked. I don't know what that word means. Trixie tried over to Tootsie, settled down in front of her. Passionately, she explained. It's a good word for you. You should use it. But anyway, what question did you want to ask? Is it about magic? Sort of, Tootsie said, rubbing one hoof against her opposite leg as he considered. Okay, I'm the best in class at magic, or at least I'm as good as Tinky. She nodded towards the great unicorn foal, nodded with pride. So she looked back to Trixie. My mom and papa said I was because I come from a good pedigree. Trixie frowned. A good pedigree? She asked, what are you, a dog? What's that supposed to mean? Trixie yelled a hoof. Well, you see, my mama and papa are both unicorns, and their parents are unicorns, and their parents are unicorns. Twilight said, glancing back at Trixie. Glanced back, both looked nervous for some reason. My mama and papa don't think that there's anything wrong with our ponies or Pegasi, though, Tootsie insisted. That was the case as far as she knew anyway. Family moved to Ponyville a couple generations ago for Canterlot, after all. Great-grandmother had even been the town's representative, appointed by Luna herself. Ponyville had much more Earth ponies than anything, Tootsie continued. But my mama and papa always say that unicorns marrying and having foals of other tribes that lose the blood. That's why Snails is having trouble with magic. Because his family are all Pegasi. It doesn't work like that, Trixie said, glancing at Twilight. Right, Sparkle. Twilight was tapping her hose together, glancing at Trixie. Then back to Tootsie. Not exactly, she said in a small voice. Trixie paused a step before her eyes near a while. Twilight, she said, her voice dropping an octave. Twilight held her up close. Just let me explain, okay? She asked, then looked back to Tootsie, looking at her head some moment before pressing on. Tootsie wasn't sure why she was so nervous. All she did was ask a question. Okay, Tootsie, it is true that unicorns raised amongst unicorns tend to learn magic faster and know more spells, but that's because they have their magic to teach them, or even have more opportunities to see their parents do magic. Just making things up for now. She looked at Trixie across her hooves. But, she asked, my whole family is a mix of all the tribes, Sparkle. Twilight nodded, glancing around the library. But, she said, lifting a few books, before smiling as he pulled out the ones he was looking for. She flipped it open and held it in front of Tootsie. It was a Fool's history book. But Starsword the Bearded? She asked. The most powerful pony practitioner who ever lived? His family were mostly Earth ponies, Tootsie blinked. I didn't know that, she admitted. There's more, Twilight said, holding up a hoof. Okay, let me think of some of the other famous unicorns. Red Magician was all unicorns in his family, but Astral Star came from a mixed family. So did Dry Inkwell. Skycast was a Pegasus unicorn, though, admittedly, he was mostly unicorn family. Tootsie was significantly more relieved at Twilight's words as he went to Tootsie. The point is that unicorn spellcasters can be great spellcasters no matter who their parents are, she explained, tapping her hose together. Your parents probably just made a mistake. They probably read somewhere and knows that unicorns raised among unicorns tend to learn faster, and assumed it was because they were pure unicorns, but that's not the case. Tootsie nodded. That makes sense. Those made mistakes just like Foles did. She knew that they were just better covering them up sometimes. She smiled a little at this new knowledge. So, there's nothing wrong with a unicorn marrying an earth bunny? She asked. Tracy smiled, touching Tootsie's mane. And not a thing. Though maybe you still let Truffle Stumble know you're going to be marrying him at some point. Tootsie blushed, the grin grew wider, as she tried to hide it with her hooves. The Airfoals, who hadn't been watching, giggled a little at the sight. Tracy and Twilight glanced between each other, then back to them. Okay, Twilight said, like standing up. We should get back to learning that cantrip. She paused, glancing at Trixie. Maybe you could hold off on teaching Firelock anything? Just until she's learned this. Trixie nodded as she joined Twilight, trying over to the foals. Hey, you got a cooling paper? She asked. I want to make sure to take time to write down something before I forget. Sure, Twilight said, pointing out the library's front desk. Trixie was off in a moment. Twilight looked at 7 foals. 6 of them gathered their magical notes and settled down in front of Twilight's chalkboard again. While Snails required a pencil and paper of his own, so doing his best to write down his own notes. Twilight let out catch up. Clapped their heels together. Okay, she said. Let's learn some magic!